slick with morning frost, and Alara's hands trembled as she gripped the iron railing. Her breath came in shallow gasps, not from exertion, but from the crushing weight of fear that had settled into her bones over the past 3 months. 3 months since he'd looked at her with those ice-cold eyes and spoken the words that shattered her world. "You are not my mate. I reject this bond." 3 months since Cale Thorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, had turned his back on her in front of the entire Pack Council, leaving her standing alone in a room that suddenly felt like a tomb. 3 months since she'd discovered she was carrying his child. The morning sun barely touched the frost-covered grounds of the Silverwood Estate, the ancestral home of the Pack's elite. Alara had been summoned here not by Cale, who hadn't spoken to her since the rejection, but by his council. They called it a welfare check. She knew better. They wanted to see if the rejected Omega had finally broken. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, still flat beneath the oversized sweater she wore. 18 weeks. The Pack doctor had confirmed it yesterday, his eyes filled with a pity that made her want to scream. No one knew whose child it was. She'd kept that secret locked behind her teeth, even as whispers followed her through the Pack territory like shadows, disgraced, rejected, alone. The council chamber loomed at the top of the stairs, 43 steps she'd counted on her way up. Now, descending, each step felt like walking toward an execution. "Alara." The voice stopped her mid-step. She turned to find 3 women blocking the landing below. Luna, Sage, and Iris, daughters of the council members, polished and predatory in their designer clothes and carefully applied makeup. They'd never liked her, even before the rejection. Now, they looked at her like she was something rotting. "Going somewhere?" Luna's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I've finished with the council." Alara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm leaving." "Leaving?" Sage laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Is that what you call running away with your bastard?" The word hit her like a physical blow. Alara's grip tightened on the railing. "My child is none of your concern. Everything that happens in this pack is our concern." Iris stepped forward, her eyes glinting with malice. "Especially when it involves an Omega spreading lies about the Alpha King. You think we don't know?" Luna's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You think we don't see the way you still look at him? Pathetic. He rejected you because you're nothing. A weak bloodline. Tainted." The word tainted echoed in Alara's mind. It was pack law, ancient, cruel, unbreakable. Her grandmother had been born human, had married into the pack. 3 generations later, that human blood was still considered a stain, a weakness that made her Omega status even lower. Cale had known. He'd known when he'd pulled her into that moonlit clearing 6 months ago, when his hands had been gentle and his eyes had held something that looked like wonder. He'd known when he'd whispered promises against her skin, and he'd still rejected her. "Move," Alara said quietly. "Please." Luna's smile widened. "Make us." The shove came without warning. Luna's hands connected with Alara's shoulders, and suddenly the world tilted. Her foot slipped on the frost-slicked stone. The railing slipped from her grasp. For one suspended moment, she was weightless. Then she was falling. The stairs rushed up to meet her. Her hip struck stone, her shoulder, her head cracked against the edge of a step, and the world exploded into stars. She tumbled, unable to stop, unable to protect. The baby. Oh God, the baby. She hit the landing with a sickening thud, her body crumpling like paper. Pain radiated through her in waves, sharp and all-consuming. Above her, she heard gasps. Luna's shocked voice saying, "She just fell." Alara's vision swam. Through the haze, she saw the council chamber doors burst open. Figures rushed down the stairs. But there was one figure that stood perfectly still at the top. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair catching the morning light. Cale. Their eyes met across the distance. And even through her pain, even through the blood now pooling beneath her head, she felt it, that cursed bond he'd tried to sever. It flared to life like lightning in her chest, screaming, "Mate, mate, mate." His face was expressionless, carved from ice. But his eyes, for just one heartbeat, held something that looked like devastation. Then the world went dark, and Alara's last conscious thought was a prayer to the moon goddess she no longer believed in. "Please, save my baby, even if you won't save me." The antiseptic smell of the pack infirmary invaded Alara's senses before consciousness fully returned. Her eyelids felt weighted, her body distant and strange, as though she were floating somewhere between dream and waking. Pain pulsed through her skull in rhythmic waves that matched her heartbeat. The baby. Her eyes snapped open. Panic clawed up her throat as her hand flew to her stomach, pressing against the thin hospital gown. A monitor beeped steadily beside her bed, and she became aware of an IV line trailing from her arm. "Don't move." The voice was granite cold, commanding, unmistakable. Kael stood by the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the gray afternoon light. He wore the same dark shirt from this morning, but his shoulders were rigid with tension that seemed to fill the entire room. "My baby." Her voice cracked. "Alive." The single word was clipped. For now. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she felt dizzy. "How long?" 6 hours. He still hadn't turned around. "You fractured your skull, dislocated your shoulder. The pack doctor says you're lucky you didn't break your neck." Lucky. The word tasted bitter. Alara shifted slightly, wincing as pain shot through her shoulder. The monitors beside her bed beeped faster. "The council witnesses say you slipped." His voice was emotionless, but something underneath it vibrated like a wire pulled too tight. "On the frost." She heard what he wasn't saying. Luna, Sage, and Iris had lied. Of course they had. "I was pushed," Alara said quietly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kael's hands, she noticed, were clenched into fists at his sides. By whom? Does it matter? Bitterness leaked into her voice despite her exhaustion. "You rejected me. What happens to me isn't your concern anymore, Alpha King." She saw his shoulders tense at the formal title. Good. Let him remember what he'd done, how he'd humiliated her in front of everyone who mattered. The child. His voice had gone even colder, if that were possible. "Whose is it?" The question hung between them like a blade. Alara's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You have no right to ask me that. I'm alpha of this pack. Every member is my concern. Then perhaps you should have considered that before you severed our bond." She forced herself to meet his gaze as he finally turned. Those eyes, storm gray and merciless, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Even now, even after everything, the mate bond writhed inside her chest like a living thing, desperate to reach him. She watched his jaw clench. "Answer the question, Alara. Or what? You'll reject me again?" She pushed herself up despite the screaming pain in her shoulder, needing to face him with whatever dignity she had left. "You made it very clear I mean nothing to you. My child's parentage is none of your business." Something flickered across his face too quick to catch. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously soft. "The pack doctor called me because omega pregnancies are rare, especially for unmated females." He took a step closer, and Alara hated how her body responded, leaning toward him even as her mind screamed to pull away. "He also informed me that the child carries alpha blood, strong alpha blood." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd known the pack doctor would test the baby's lineage. It was protocol, but she hadn't expected him to share the results with anyone, especially not Kael. "There are many alphas in this pack," she managed. "Not many who could father a child strong enough to survive a fall like that." His eyes bore into hers. "The doctor says it's a miracle. The fetus should have miscarried from the trauma alone. But something protected it, something powerful." Alara's mouth went dry. She hadn't known that, hadn't realized how close she'd come to losing everything. Royal bloodline. Kael's voice was barely above a whisper now, and he'd crossed half the distance between them. Only royal alpha blood carries that kind of protective instinct, even in utero. "So I'll ask you one more time, Alara. Whose child is it?" She wanted to tell him, wanted to scream it in his face, wanted to watch his carefully controlled expression crack, but fear held her tongue. Not fear of him, but fear of what he might do. Would he try to take the baby? Claim it as his heir while still denying her? "Why do you care?" she whispered instead. "You made your choice." For the first time since she'd woken, genuine emotion crossed his face. It looked like agony. "That child." He stopped, seemed to struggle with something. When he continued, his voice was raw. "If that child is mine, it changes everything. It changes nothing." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You rejected me because of my bloodline. Because I'm tainted." "Those are your words, Kael. You think having your baby makes me less human? Less weak? I never said you were weak. You didn't have to." The monitor's beeping had accelerated. Kael's eyes flicked to it, then back to her face. Something in his expression shifted, softened, almost imperceptibly. "You need to rest." The command in his voice had gentled. "We'll discuss this when you're stronger." "There's nothing to discuss." He moved suddenly, closing the remaining distance between them. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, and Alara froze. The mate bond roared to life, singing at his nearness. His scent pine and winter storms and something uniquely him wrapped around her. His fingers stopped inches from her cheek. His eyes held hers, and in them she saw something that looked like longing, like regret, like a war being fought behind those cold gray depths. Rest, Alara. His voice was almost tender. Please. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving her alone with the monitors and the phantom warmth of his almost touch, and the terrible, undeniable truth burning in her chest. The baby was his. And somehow, he already knew. Alara was released from the infirmary 3 days later with strict orders to rest and a prescription she couldn't afford to fill. The pack doctor, an elderly wolf named Marcus with kind eyes that held too many secrets, had pulled her aside before she left. The Alpha King has requested daily updates on your condition, he'd said quietly, glancing toward the door as if Kale might materialize at any moment. And the babies. Tell him I'm fine, Alara had replied, though fine felt like a foreign concept. Her shoulder was still wrapped, her head still ached, and every time she closed her eyes she felt herself falling. Alara. Marcus's hand had been gentle on her arm. There's something you should know. The baby's protective response during the fall. I've only seen it once before, decades ago. In the old Alpha King's line. He'd paused, weighing his words. Royal wolves protect their own, even before birth. But this child, the power signature, is remarkable. Almost ancient. Ancient. The word had followed her out of the infirmary and into the small cottage at the edge of Pack, territory where she'd been living since the rejection. It was modest, 2 rooms and a kitchen that barely functioned, but it was hers. Or at least, it had been assigned to her as part of her Omega designation. Now, standing in her dimly lit living room as dusk settled over the forest, Alara wondered how long even this small mercy would last. A knock at the door made her jump. Her heart raced as she moved toward it, every instinct screaming danger. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure, and for one irrational moment she thought, not Kale. She opened the door to find Theron, Kale's beta and oldest friend, standing on her porch with an expression caught somewhere between duty and discomfort. Alara. He nodded, respectful despite her fallen status. Theron had always been kind to her, even after the rejection. May I come in? She stepped aside, hyper-aware of how small her cottage must seem to someone who lived in the main pack house. Theron's eyes swept the space taking in the worn furniture, the empty refrigerator visible through the kitchen doorway, the single pair of shoes by the door. The Alpha sent you. It wasn't a question. He did. Theron's voice was careful. He wants to ensure you have everything you need. I need nothing from him. Alara, Theron sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Please, don't make this harder than it has to be. You're injured, pregnant, alone. Let us help. Us? Bitterness crept into her voice. Where was this concern 3 months ago when your Alpha humiliated me? Where were you when I was pushed down those stairs? Guilt flashed across Theron's face. I wasn't there. If I had been, it wouldn't have mattered. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the small fire crackling in the hearth. Nothing matters except bloodlines and pack law. I'm tainted, remember? My grandmother's human blood makes me unworthy. Kale doesn't believe that. The words hung in the air, between them. Alara stared at Theron, searching his face for the lie. Then why did he reject me? Theron's expression shifted something like pain, like knowing too much and being able to say too little. It's not my story to tell. But Alara, you need to understand the rejection. It's killing him. Good. The word came out sharper than she intended. He deserves to suffer. Does he? Theron took a step closer, his voice dropping. Or is there more happening here than you know? Have you asked yourself why he rejected you publicly but can't seem to stay away? Why he stood watch outside your infirmary room for 3 days straight? Why he looks like a man being torn apart every time someone mentions your name? Alara's breath caught. What? He never left. Theron's eyes were steady on hers. Not once. Marcus had to force him to eat. The council demanded his presence at meetings and he refused them all. You were unconscious, Alara. But he was there. Always. The revelation shook something loose inside her. She thought of waking alone, of Kale's cold demeanor, his controlled distance. Had it all been a facade? I don't understand. Neither do I. Completely. Theron pulled an envelope from his jacket. But he asked me to give you this, and to tell you that Luna, Sage, and Iris have been removed from Pack territory pending investigation. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. It was heavy, expensive paper, sealed with the Alpha King's mark, a silver wolf beneath a crescent moon. He knows they pushed me? He knows. Theron's voice hardened. And there will be consequences. No one touches what's his. And he stopped abruptly, as if he'd said too much. I'm not his. But even as she spoke, her hand moved to her stomach. He made that clear. Did he? Theron moved toward the door, then paused. Read the letter, Alara. And tomorrow night, there's a pack gathering at the northern cliff. The full moon ceremony. You're not required to attend given your condition, but I think you should. I think you need to see something. See what? Theron's smile was sad. The truth he can't speak aloud. Then he was gone, leaving Alara alone with the sealed envelope and questions that multiplied like shadows. She moved to the window, watching darkness claim the forest. Somewhere out there, Kale was in the main pack house. Was he thinking of her? Was Theron right? Was the rejection destroying him too? Her fingers traced the seal. Part of her wanted to throw the letter into the fire unread. But a larger part, the part that still felt the phantom warmth of his almost touch, that remembered his voice saying rest, please with something like tenderness, needed to know. She broke the seal. Inside, in handwriting she recognized from official pack documents, were 4 words that made her heart stop. Forgive me. It's complicated. Come tomorrow. Please. K. Beneath it, a single pressed silver leaf, the kind that only grew on the ancient tree, at the northern cliff, the ceremonial site, the place where pack bonds were formed and, rarely, where they were broken, or remade. Outside her window, a wolf howled in the distance. The sound was mournful, desperate, and something in her soul recognized it, recognized him. Sleep refused to come. Alara lay in her narrow bed, watching moonlight paint silver patterns across her ceiling. Kale's letter clutched against her chest. The pressed leaf had released a faint scent, earth and winter, and something older, something that spoke of magic she barely understood. Forgive me, it's complicated. What could possibly be complicated about destroying someone? About looking into their eyes and severing the most sacred bond their kind could share? She rose before dawn, her body aching but restless. The cottage felt suffocating suddenly, too small to contain the questions churning through her mind. Against her better judgment, she dressed warmly and slipped outside into the pre-dawn darkness. The forest was quiet, holding its breath between night and morning. Alara walked without direction, letting her feet choose the path. She shouldn't be out here, not injured, not pregnant, not alone. But solitude had become her only friend these past months, and the trees didn't judge her for being tainted. She didn't realize where she was heading until she heard the sound of water. The northern stream cut through pack territory like a silver vein, feeding into the lake near the ceremonial grounds. Alara had come here often before the rejection, drawn by its wild beauty. Now she stood on the bank, watching dawnlight begin to touch the water's surface. A branch snapped behind her. She spun, heart hammering, and found herself face to face with an elderly woman she'd never seen before. The stranger was small, wizened, with eyes that seemed to hold centuries. She wore traditional pack clothing, leather, and woven silver that marked her as someone important, though Alara couldn't place her. You're the rejected Omega. It wasn't a question. The woman's voice was like wind through autumn leaves. Alara lifted her chin. I'm Alara. I know who you are, child. The woman moved closer, studying her with an intensity that made Alara want to step back. I know what you carry, too. Royal blood. The last hope of a dying line. I don't understand. No, you wouldn't. The woman's gaze moved to Alara's stomach. They've kept the truth from you. From everyone. But the old laws remember what the young have forgotten. What truth? Who are you? I am Mira, Elder of the Moon Council, Keeper of the Ancient Rites. She gestured to a fallen log near the stream. Sit. You need to hear this before tonight's ceremony. Every instinct told Alara to run. Strange women appearing in forests, speaking in riddles. It was the beginning of every cautionary tale she'd ever heard. But something in Mira's eyes held her. Not threat, but urgency. Desperation, even. She sat. Mira settled beside her, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years. Do you know why Alpha Kings can only mate with certain bloodlines? Pack law. Strength must be preserved. That's what they tell you. The sanitized version. Mira's laugh was bitter. The truth is darker, child. And older. The Alpha King line carries a curse. Alara's blood ran cold. What kind of curse? 300 years ago. The first Alpha King Kale's ancestor rejected his true mate to marry for political power. The moon goddess herself appeared before him and spoke a prophecy. Every 7th generation, an Alpha King will face the same choice. Reject the true mate, and the bloodline will weaken unto death. Accept the mate, despite all obstacles, and the curse will break, but the true mate will always be deemed unworthy by pack law. The words settled over Alara like frost. 7th generation. Kale is the 7th. Mira's eyes were grave. And you are his true mate. The one who breaks all the rules. Human blood, Omega designation, no political power. Everything pack law says an Alpha King cannot choose. Alara's mind raced, but he rejected me. He had no choice. Mira's hand found hers, surprisingly warm. The council discovered your grandmother's human lineage. They invoked the ancient breeding laws. Kyle was given an ultimatum: reject you publicly and save you from being exiled from Packlands entirely, or accept the bond and watch you be banished to the wilderness where rogues would tear you apart within days. The forest seemed to tilt around her. No, that's not. He would have told me. Would he? And make you choose between exile and watching him suffer? You don't know Kale Thorne as I do, child. He would burn himself to ash before letting harm come to his mate, even if it meant breaking both your hearts. Tears blurred Alara's vision. 3 months. 3 months she'd hated him, thought herself worthless in his eyes, carried their child alone because she believed he'd discarded her like garbage. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the council forbade it. Because acknowledging you as his true mate would force their hand, make them choose between ancient law and pack survival. They hoped you would leave, that the rejection would drive you away, and the problem would solve itself. The baby changes everything. Mira's grip tightened. Royal blood doesn't lie. The moment Marcus confirmed the child's lineage, the council's carefully constructed lies began to crumble. They can deny your bond, but they cannot deny his heir. Alara pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling the subtle swell that had appeared over the past weeks. What happens at tonight's ceremony? Kale will challenge the council. He will invoke the right of the Alpha King to choose his mate regardless of bloodline, using the old magic that predates their laws. It's dangerous, Alara. The council will fight him. Some may even challenge him for leadership. He could lose everything. He already has. Mira stood, her movements surprisingly graceful. He lost you. And for 3 months, that loss has been eating him alive. Tonight he'll risk his throne, his life, everything he is, for a chance to make it right. I don't know if I can forgive him. That's not for me to decide. Mira turned to leave, then paused. But know this, the curse requires more than just accepting the bond. It requires your choice too. You must willingly accept him, scars and all, mistakes and all, before the full moon reaches its peak. Otherwise, the bloodline dies with your child. The curse wins. That's not fair. Curses rarely are. Mira's smile was sad. The ceremony begins at moonrise. Northern Cliff. Wear white if you choose to stand with him. Wear black if you cannot forgive. She started walking into the trees, then called back. Choose with your heart, child. Not your hurt. Then she was gone, melting into the forest like smoke. Alara sat alone by the stream as dawn broke, fully over the mountains, turning the water to liquid gold. In her mind, she replayed every moment since the rejection, Kale's cold eyes that sometimes flickered with agony. His vigil outside her infirmary room, the way his hand had almost touched her face. Forgive me. It's complicated. Now she understood the complication. The impossible choice he'd faced, the sacrifice he'd made thinking it would save her. But understanding didn't erase 3 months of pain, didn't undo the loneliness, the shame, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. Tonight, she would have to make a choice of her own. Forgiveness or freedom. The moon would wait for neither. Alara spent the day in a fog of indecision, pacing the narrow confines of her cottage until her feet wore a path in the wooden floor. 2 dresses lay spread across her bed, one white as fresh snow, one black as a moonless night. White for forgiveness, black for goodbye. The choice should have been simple. He'd hurt her, humiliated her, let her believe she was worthless for 3 endless months. But Mira's words echoed relentlessly through her mind. He would burn himself to ash before letting harm come to his mate. A knock startled her from her thoughts. She opened the door to find a young Omega, named Sarah, barely 16, holding a wooden box tied with silver ribbon. From the Alpha King, Sarah said softly, her eyes wide with curiosity and something like hope. He asked that you open it before tonight. Alara took the box with trembling hands. Sarah lingered, clearly desperate to see what was inside, but Alara gently closed the door. Some moments needed privacy. Inside the box, nestled in black velvet, was a silver comb, ancient, delicate, inlaid with moonstones that seemed to glow with their own light. Beneath it, a note in Cale's stark handwriting. This belonged to my mother. She wore it the night she chose my father, despite the council's opposition. She told me once that true strength isn't following laws, it's breaking them when love demands it. Whatever you choose tonight, you deserve to know. You were never weak. You were always the strongest person I've ever known. The mistake was mine. Kay. Alara's vision blurred. She lifted the comb, feeling its weight, its history. Cale's mother had died when he was young, she knew that much from pack gossip. For him to offer this, something so precious, she set it carefully on her dresser, and returned to staring at the dresses. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Alara's hands moved to her stomach, feeling the subtle flutter that had begun just yesterday, the baby moving for the first time. A butterfly whisper of life. "What should I do?" she whispered to the child growing inside her. "He's your father, but he broke my heart." The baby fluttered again, as if in response. Alara closed her eyes and let herself remember not the rejection, but before. The night Cale had found her crying by, the lake after another Omega had called her tainted. How he'd sat beside her without a word, just his presence steady and certain. How he'd finally said, "They're wrong. You're not defined by your bloodline. You're defined by your spirit, and yours burns brighter than anyone I've ever known." She remembered the first time he'd kissed her, tentative and reverent, as if she were something precious. The way he'd held her after, his forehead pressed to hers, whispering, "I didn't know I was missing something until I found you." She remembered his face in the council chamber the day of the rejection, not cold, but carved from stone, like a man performing his own execution, and the single tear that had tracked down his cheek after he'd spoken the words, the one everyone else had been too focused on her devastation to notice. But she'd seen it. Decision crystallized in her chest like ice forming over water. She reached for the white dress. The northern cliff was already crowded when Alara arrived, pack members forming a semicircle around the ancient tree that grew at the cliff's edge. Its branches spread wide against the darkening sky, silver leaves rustling in the evening wind. Torches burned around the perimeter, casting dancing shadows across stone worn smooth by centuries of ceremonies. Silence fell as Alara stepped into the clearing. She'd worn the white dress simple, flowing, the color stark against her dark hair which she'd pinned up with Cale's mother's comb. The moonstones caught the firelight, gleaming like captured stars. The crowd parted. At the far end of the circle, near the ancient tree, stood the council's 7 stern-faced elders in their ceremonial robes. And in front of them, alone and unbowed, stood Cale. He wore the formal attire of the Alpha King black with silver threading that matched the markings on his arms, visible now with his sleeves rolled back. His eyes found hers across the distance, and she watched his entire body go still. His gaze moved from her face to the white dress to the comb in her hair, and something that looked like hope broke across his expression before he could hide it. "The Omega comes," one of the council members said, his voice dripping disdain. "Uninvited and unwelcome. She's my invited guest." Cale's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "And she will be treated with the respect due to the mother of my child." Gasps rippled through the crowd. So he was acknowledging it publicly, claiming the baby as his heir. Alara's heart hammered as she moved forward, each step bringing her closer to the point of no return. Theron appeared at her elbow, offering his arm. "Let me," he murmured. "You shouldn't walk alone." She accepted gratefully, letting him guide her through the crowd. Up close, she could see the toll the past months had taken on Cale. He looked harder, leaner, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. But when she stopped a few feet away from him, she also saw the vulnerability in his gaze, the fear that she might turn and walk away. Alara. Her name on his lips was a prayer and a question. "I'm here," she said simply. The head counselor, a severe man named Aldrich, stepped forward. "This is highly irregular. The ceremony has not begun." "Then let it begin." Cale never took his eyes off Alara. "I invoke the right of Alpha King to challenge pack law under the Old Covenant. I claim my true mate before the moon and before witnesses, regardless of bloodline or council approval." "You know the consequences," Aldrich warned. "Challenge the council's breeding laws, and you challenge your right to rule." "I know." Cale's voice was steady. "I'm prepared to fight for my throne. And for her. Then you're a fool." Another counselor, a woman named Vera, sneered. "She's tainted, weak. Her bloodline will corrupt. Enough. The word cracked like thunder. Kale's power rolled out pure alpha dominance that made every wolf present, including the council, bare their necks in instinctive submission. Every wolf except Elara, whom the command seemed to flow around like water around stone. I will not hear my mate disrespected, Kale continued, his voice deadly quiet. Not by you, not by anyone. Challenge me if you dare, but you will show her the honor she deserves. In the heavy silence that followed, the moon began to rise over the cliff's edge, full and silver and ancient. The ceremony had begun, and with it, Elara's choice would be tested in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The moon climbed higher, its light washing over the assembled pack in waves of silver. Elara felt its pull in her blood stronger than ever before, as if the pregnancy had awakened something primal in her Omega nature. Beside her, she sensed Kale fighting the same pull, his wolf straining against his control. Mira emerged from the crowd, moving with purpose toward the ancient tree. She carried a ceremonial bowl carved from dark stone, filled with something that gleamed like liquid starlight. The Alpha King has invoked the Old Covenant, Mira announced, her voice carrying across the clearing. A rite not exercised in 300 years. He claims his true mate, despite council opposition, despite pack law, despite the consequences to his throne. She turned to face the council. Do you accept his challenge? Aldrich's face was rigid with fury. We do not accept. This Omega is unsuitable. The Old Covenant doesn't ask for your acceptance. Mira's eyes flashed. It demands only your acknowledgement. The Alpha King has the right to choose his mate by blood and bond, superseding all breeding laws. This right was written into our foundation by the moon goddess herself. The council serves as check against royal tyranny. Vera interjected. We will not stand aside while he destroys our bloodline with Tainted. Call her Tainted one more time. Kale's voice was soft, deadly. Please, give me the excuse. The threat hung in the air. Vera's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes burned with malice. Mira continued as if there had been no interruption. The Old Covenant requires 3 elements: public declaration, willing acceptance, and the moon's blessing. The Alpha King has made his declaration. Now we must hear from the Omega herself. She turned to Elara. Elara Thornborn, do you come here of your own free will? I do. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Do you understand that accepting this bond will make you Alpha Queen, subject to challenges from those who oppose you? That your life and your child's life may be threatened by those who cling to old prejudices? Elara's hand moved to her stomach. She'd thought coming here in white was her decision made. But now, hearing the reality spoken aloud, doubt crept in. She would be putting not just herself but their baby in danger. As if sensing her hesitation, Kale spoke. Elara, look at me. She met his eyes, those storm-gray eyes that had haunted her dreams for months. I won't lie to you. Not anymore. His voice carried to every corner of the clearing. Accepting this bond will paint a target on your back. The council will fight us. Some pack members will never accept you. You'll face challenges, threats, possibly worse. He took a step closer, and she felt the mate bond flare between them, hot and insistent. But I swear to you, on my life and my crown, I will protect you. I will stand beside you. I will never, never abandon you again. Even if you choose to walk away tonight, I will still protect you and our child until my last breath. Pretty words, Aldrich scoffed. But where were these promises when you rejected her before the council? When you called her unworthy? Pain flashed across Kale's face. I called the situation impossible. I never called her unworthy. But you twisted my words, didn't you, Aldrich? Made sure she heard only the rejection, not my reasoning. Made sure no one told her about your ultimatum exile or public rejection. You gambled that she'd leave Packlands entirely, and the problem would disappear. The accusation hung heavy. Aldrich's expression confirmed its truth even as his mouth opened to deny it. You used her as a pawn, Kale continued, his voice hardening. You manipulated us both, thinking you could control the Alpha King through fear. But your mistake was assuming I'd choose my throne over my mate. He turned back to Elara. I made the wrong choice 3 months ago. I thought I was saving you. I was wrong. I should have fought then. I should have trusted you to be strong enough to stand beside me in the fight. I'm asking now, will you give me a chance to make it right? Elara's throat tightened. She'd come here thinking forgiveness was a simple choice, wear white or black, say yes or no. But standing here, feeling the weight of pack politics and ancient grudges pressing down on her, she realized forgiveness was only the beginning. The real question was, did she have the strength to? become what they needed her to be? I have a question first. Her voice cut through the tension. She looked directly at Aldrich. You said my bloodline would corrupt the royal line. That human blood makes me weak. But answer me this, if I'm so weak, why did my baby survive a fall that should have killed it? Why does Pack Dr. Marcus say the protective response was stronger than anything he's seen in pure-blooded wolves? Aldrich's jaw clenched. He had no answer. Elara continued, gaining confidence. You hide behind pack law and bloodline purity, but you're afraid. Not of my weakness, of my strength. Of what it means if an Omega with human blood can carry royal children stronger than your pure bloodlines ever produced. She let her gaze sweep across the council. You're afraid that everything you've built your power on is a lie. Silence. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a young wolf began to clap. Then another. The sound spread until half the pack was applauding, many looking at Elara, with new respect. Mira's smile was fierce and proud. The Omega has spoken her truth. Now, Elara Thornborn, I ask you formally, do you accept the Alpha King as your mate? Do you claim him before Moon and Pack, despite all obstacles? Elara looked at Kale. Really looked at him. Saw the man who'd made a terrible choice trying to protect her. The man who'd stood vigil for 3 days while she lay unconscious. The man who was willing to lose everything for a chance to make things right. She saw the father of her child. Her true mate. Her future. I do. The words came out clear and certain. I accept Kale Thorne as my mate. I claim him before the moon, before the pack, before any who would challenge us. And I will stand beside him, not behind him, as we face whatever comes. The bond between them exploded to life, no longer the painful, severed thing it had been, but whole and blazing like the sun. Kale's breath caught. Elara gasped as power flooded through her, the mate bond, completing in a rush that made her knees weak. Kale moved, catching her before she could fall. His arms came around her, steady and sure, and she felt his heart hammering against her back. The bond is acknowledged, Mira declared, raising the ceremonial bowl. Now we seal it with the moon's blessing. No. The word came from behind the council. A figure stepped from the shadows at the edge of the clearing, tall, powerfully built, with eyes that gleamed red in the moonlight. Rogue. The scent hit Elara a moment later, wrong, corrupted, dangerous. The ceremony, the stranger said, his voice like gravel, is not yet complete. And I have come to issue a challenge for the right to the Omega and her child. Around them, the pack erupted into chaos. Kyle moved instantly, placing himself between Elara and the stranger. His power rolled out in waves, every inch of him radiating lethal intent. Around them, pack wolves shifted into defensive positions, growls rumbling through the clearing. Identify yourself, Kale commanded, his voice pure alpha authority. The stranger smiled, revealing teeth too sharp to be fully human. He was older than Elara had first thought, perhaps 50, with silver threading through dark hair and scars marking his face and arms. But it was his eyes that held her attention, red-rimmed and wild, yet underneath, something calculating lurked. I am Damon Blackwood, and I have every right to be here. The name sent a ripple of shock through the assembled wolves. Elara felt Theron tense beside her, heard gasps from the crowd. Even the council looked shaken. Blackwood, Aldrich breathed. That bloodline was extinct. Wiped out in the purge 70 years ago. Not extinct. Damon's smile widened. Merely. Waiting. And now I've come to claim what's mine by ancient right, the Omega carrying royal blood. Kale's growl was inhuman. She belongs to no one but herself. And she's chosen me. Has she? Damon's red-tinged gaze fixed on Elara, and she Damon's. Fought the urge to step back, or did she simply choose the devil she knows over the one she doesn't? Tell me, little Omega, do you know what the Blackwood line was before the Thorns destroyed us? Rogues, Mira said, stepping forward. Her expression was grim. The Blackwood pack turned rogue, abandoned pack law, slaughtered humans and wolves alike. They were eliminated to protect our kind. We were rebels. Damon's voice hardened. We refused to bow to the Thorns' tyranny, refused to accept their breeding laws and bloodline obsessions. And for that, Kale's grandfather hunted us like animals. His eyes found Kale. How many of my family did your bloodline murder, Alpha King? 20? 30? My sister was 8 years old when your grandfather's wolves tore her apart. The pain in his voice was real, raw. Elara felt Kyle tense. My grandfather's actions don't justify yours, Kale said quietly. If you've come for vengeance, I've come for justice. Damon pulled something from Neen, his coat a scroll, yellowed with age. The old covenant that allows an Alpha King to claim his mate despite council opposition? It has a counterbalance. A challenge clause. If any alpha of royal blood contests the claim during the ceremony, they have the right to fight for the Omega's hand. You're not Pack, Aldrich objected. You have no right. The Blackwood line was royal before the Thorns. Our blood is as pure, our claim as ancient. Damon unrolled the scroll, revealing text written in the old language. The law is clear. During a contested mating ceremony, any royal-born alpha may issue challenge. The Omega chooses which alpha she wishes to fight for her. Then the alphas battle. Winner claims the mate and her offspring. Horror washed through Alara. No, I've already made my choice. Under duress. Damon's voice softened as he looked at her. You chose the man who rejected you, who let you suffer for months, who allowed you to be pushed downstairs while his child grew in your belly. Is that really choice, Omega? Or is it simply Stockholm Syndrome? The words hit harder than Alara wanted to admit. Doubt flickered through her, not about Chaol, but about herself. Had she chosen him because she truly forgave him? Or because she was too afraid to imagine another path? Don't listen to him, Chaol said, but he wasn't looking at Damon. His eyes were on Alara, and in them she saw fear. Not of the fight, but of losing her. Alara, please. She deserves to hear the truth. Damon moved closer, though he was careful not to cross into Chaol's immediate territory. I've watched you these past months, Alara Thornborn. Watched you grow strong despite your pain. You fascinate me, an Omega with human blood carrying a child powerful enough to survive what should have killed it. Do you know what that makes you? Tainted, she whispered, the word automatic. Extraordinary. Damon's voice rang with conviction. The old laws are wrong. Human blood doesn't weaken. It adapts, evolves, creates new strengths. Your child is proof. And if you choose me, I will honor that strength. I will build a new pack where bloodlines don't matter, where Omegas aren't judged by their ancestry. No councils, no breeding laws. Freedom. The offer was tempting in a way that terrified her. A world without the council's disdain, without the whispers of tainted following her everywhere. But at what cost? You're offering her a fantasy, Chaol said. His control was fraying. She could see his wolf in his eyes, desperate and dangerous. A pack built on vengeance and broken laws. That's not freedom, Damon. That's chaos. Better chaos than tyranny. Damon turned back to Alara. I'm not asking you to love me, Omega. I'm asking you to choose yourself. Choose your child. Choose a future where you're celebrated, not tolerated. Where your strength is an asset, not a shame to be hidden. Alara's mind raced. The mate bond with Chaol burned in her chest, pulling her toward him with primal insistence. But beneath it, her own thoughts whispered, he's not wrong. The council will never accept you. Your child will face the same prejudice you have. Is that the future you want? This is manipulation, Theron growled. You're twisting her confusion. I'm offering her choice. Damon's eyes never left Alara's. Real choice, not the illusion of choice between exile and public humiliation that the council gave her before. Mira stepped between them, her voice commanding. Enough. The challenge has been issued according to ancient law. The Omega must now decide, does she wish both alphas to fight for her hand, or does she reject the challenge entirely? If she rejects, Alara asked, her voice small, then the original bond stands, and Damon must leave Packlands or face execution for trespassing. And if I accept the challenge? Mira's expression was grave. Then you choose which alpha fights for you. The other leaves peacefully. Then you and your chosen alpha face the final test, the moon's blessing. If the moon accepts your bond, the ceremony completes. If not, she paused. If not, the curse cannot be broken. The bloodline dies with your child, and you remain unmated. The stakes couldn't be higher. Alara looked at Chaol, the man she'd loved, who'd hurt her, who was willing to lose everything to make things right. Then at Damon, a stranger offering freedom from a system that had caused her nothing but pain. The baby moved inside her, a flutter that felt almost like a protest. I need time, Alara said. I need to think. The moon waits for no one. Mira pointed to the sky where the full moon had reached its zenith. You have until it begins to set. 1 hour. Then you must choose, or the ceremony fails, and the curse remains intact. Chaol reached for her hand. The moment their skin touched, the mate bond sang right and perfect and undeniable. Alara, please, let me fight for you. Let me prove. Don't beg her. Damon's voice was sharp. Let her choose freely, without the bond clouding her judgment. But that was the problem, wasn't it? The bond was already there, already complete, already whispering mine, mine, mine with every heartbeat. Could she make a rational choice with that kind of primal pull? 1 hour, she repeated, pulling her hand from Kale's. The loss of contact felt like tearing away skin. I need 1 hour alone. You can't go alone, Kale started. She won't be. Mira placed a hand on Alara's shoulder. I'll accompany her to the sacred grove. No alphas, no council, just the Omega and the moon. That is her right. Kale looked like he wanted to argue, but Pack Law held him silent. Damon inclined his head, accepting. As Mira led her away from the clearing, Alara felt 2 sets of eyes burning into her back, one storm gray and desperate, one red-tinged and hungry, both waiting for a decision that would change everything, and she had no idea which choice would save her child, or destroy them all. The sacred grove was a small clearing ringed by silver birch trees, their pale bark glowing ghostly in the moonlight. In the center stood a pool of still water, its surface reflecting the moon so perfectly it seemed like looking into another world. Mira guided Alara to sit beside the pool, then settled across from her with a heaviness that spoke of age and wisdom. You're afraid, Mira observed. Not a question. I don't know what to choose. Alara's voice cracked. Everything Damon said, it's true. The council will never accept me. My child will grow up hearing the same insults I did. Kale can't change centuries of prejudice, no matter how much he wants to. No, Mira agreed. He can't change it alone. Alara looked up sharply. What do you mean? You think being Alpha Queen is about standing beside Kale while he fights your battles? Mira's smile was knowing. Child, if you accept this bond, you become the first queen with human blood in our history. You become the one who breaks the bloodline curse. You become the symbol that proves everything the council believes is wrong. That's not a passive role. That's revolution. The words settled over Alara like a mantle. Revolution. Not just accepting Kale's protection, but actively changing the system that had hurt them both. Damon offers the same thing, she said. A new pack, new rules. Damon offers escape. Mira's voice was gentle but firm. And there's no shame in choosing that. But ask yourself, is escape what your heart truly wants? Or is it what your fear tells you is easier? Alara stared into the pool, watching the moon's reflection ripple. I'm terrified of choosing Kale and failing. Of not being strong enough. Of our child growing up in a pack that resents their existence. And if you choose Damon, I'm terrified of that too. The admission came quietly. I don't know him. Don't know if his promises are real or if vengeance is all that drives him. The mate bond with Kale, it's real. I feel it. Breaking it would be like cutting out part of my soul. Then you have your answer. Do I? Alara's hands clenched. What if love isn't enough? What if the bond isn't enough to overcome everything stacked against us? Mira was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. 300 years ago, the first Alpha King stood where you sit now. He had a choice: follow his heart or follow power. He chose power, and that choice cursed 7 generations. Your child will be the 8th generation, free of the curse if you make the opposite choice. But here's what no one tells you about breaking curses. It's never clean, never easy. It requires sacrifice, pain, and faith that the future will be better than the past. What if I'm not strong enough? You carried a child in secret for months, while an entire pack whispered about you. You survived being pushed downstairs. You walked into a ceremony tonight in white, knowing you'd face the council's hatred. Mira reached across and took Alara's hand. You are already strong enough. The question is, do you believe it? Alara closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw 2 paths clearly. One led away from everything familiar toward Damon's promised freedom. A new pack, escape from judgment. It shimmered with possibility and danger in equal measure. The other path led back to the clearing, to Kale, to a fight that would never truly end. She would face challenges, threats, endless battles against tradition and prejudice. But she wouldn't face them alone. The baby moved inside her, stronger now. And suddenly, Alara understood. This wasn't about choosing between 2 alphas. It was about choosing what kind of world she wanted her child to inherit. One built on running from problems, or one built on facing them. I need to know something, she said, opening her eyes. The moon's blessing, what does it really mean? Mira's expression grew solemn. When a true mate, bond is accepted, the moon goddess either affirms or rejects it. Affirmation appears as light, the pool will glow, and the bond becomes unbreakable. Rejection appears as darkness, the moon's reflection vanishes, and the bond dies completely. Has the moon ever rejected a true mate bond? Only once. Mira's voice dropped. When the first Alpha King tried to force the bond after rejecting it initially, the goddess knew his heart hadn't truly changed. The bond was destroyed, and he lived the rest of his life unable to feel any mate connection. A living death for a wolf. Fear spiked through Alara. What if Kale's heart hasn't truly changed? What if he's just trying to break the curse? And once it's broken, look into the pool, Mira commanded. Alara obeyed. At first, she saw only the moon's reflection. Then the water began to shift, images forming on its surface like memories made visible. She saw Kale the night she'd been pushed, not the cold exterior he'd shown her in, the infirmary, but what had happened after she'd lost consciousness. Saw him drop to his knees beside her broken body. Saw him howl with anguish that echoed through the packlands. Saw him cradle her carefully, his tears falling on her face as he carried her to the infirmary himself, refusing to let anyone else touch her. Saw him during the 3 days she'd been unconscious, pacing outside her door like a caged wolf, snarling at anyone who suggested he rest. Saw him with his hand pressed against the door, as close as he dared get without disturbing her, whispering apologies she couldn't hear. Saw him alone in his chambers, holding the ultrasound image Marcus had given him, his expression raw with wonder and grief and desperate hope. The pool shows truth, Mira said softly. What the moon sees, not what eyes perceive. His heart changed the moment you fell. Perhaps it never needed changing at all, only the courage to act on what it knew. Alara's throat tightened. And Damon? The water shifted again. This time she saw Damon in shadows, speaking with other rogues. Heard him say, "The Omega is powerful, her child will be the key to destroying the Thorn line from within. Once I claim her, we'll have royal blood to legitimize our pack. Then we take everything." Ice flooded through her veins. "He lied," she whispered. "Not entirely," Mira corrected. "He does want to build a new pack, but his foundation is vengeance, not freedom. In his world, you'd simply be trading one form of control for another." Alara stood abruptly, her decision crystallizing. "How much time do I have?" 10 minutes before the moon begins to set. "Then we need to go back. Now." They hurried through the forest, Alara's heart pounding with urgency. She'd been so focused on her own hurt that she'd almost missed the truth. Love that fights for you, even imperfectly, was worth more than pretty promises built on lies. The clearing came into view. Kale stood exactly where she'd left him, his eyes fixed on the path as if he could will her to return. Damon leaned against the ancient tree, confident and waiting. The entire pack fell silent as Alara stepped into the moonlight. "I've made my choice," she announced, her voice carrying across the clearing. She walked straight to Kale, watching hope and fear war in his eyes. "I choose you, not because the bond demands it, not because I'm afraid of the alternative, but because I choose to fight beside you, not run from what we could build together." Kale's breath shuddered out. "Alara." She held up her hand. "But I have conditions." Kale's eyes widened slightly at her words, but he nodded. "Name them." Alara turned to face the assembled pack, drawing strength from the baby growing inside her, from the silver comb in her hair, from every moment of pain that had brought her to this clearing. "If I become your Alpha Queen," she said, her voice steady and clear, "then I will not be a figurehead. I will not stand silent while the Council makes decisions that affect our people. I will have a voice in pack law, in challenges, in every matter that shapes our future." Aldrich sputtered. "The Council has governed for centuries. The Council has also perpetuated prejudice for centuries." Alara cut him off. "Has enforced laws that value blood over character. That ends now. Or I walk away and let your precious bloodline curse continue." The threat landed hard. She watched several Council members blanch, understanding suddenly that she held more power than they'd ever given her credit for. "What else?" Kale's voice held something that sounded like pride. "The breeding laws are abolished. Immediately. No more dictating who can mate based on bloodlines. No more exiling Omegas who don't meet arbitrary standards." She met Aldrich's furious gaze without flinching. "And Luna, Sage, and Iris will be formally tried for attempted murder. Not quietly removed. Not pending investigation. Full trial, full consequences." "Agreed," Kale said without hesitation. The speed of his acceptance drew murmurs from the crowd. Alara's heart hammered, but she pressed on. "And one more thing. I want the truth told publicly. About the ultimatum. About why you rejected me. About how the Council manipulated us both. No more secrets. No more letting them control the narrative." This time Kale hesitated. She saw him glance at the Council, saw the calculation in his eyes. Exposing the council's actions would weaken their authority permanently. It would reshape pack politics in ways that couldn't be undone. The stability of the pack, Aldrich began, was built on lies. Alara finished. And I won't raise my child in a pack that functions through manipulation and fear. Truth, Kale. That's my final condition. All of it, publicly acknowledged. The silence stretched. Then Kale turned to face the council, his expression carved from stone. 3 months ago, the council discovered Alara's grandmother was human, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. They invoked ancient breeding laws and gave me an ultimatum: reject her publicly, or they would use their authority to exile her from Packlands entirely. Alone, unprotected, easy prey for rogues. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several wolves turned to stare at the council with shock and growing anger. I believed I was choosing the lesser evil, Kale continued. I thought a rejection with her remaining safely in Pack territory was better than exile and certain death. I was wrong. I should have fought them then. Should have challenged laws built on prejudice and fear. Instead, I hurt the one person I was meant to protect. His eyes found Alara's. I will regret that choice for the rest of my life, but I'm choosing differently now. Alara's conditions are met. All of them. You can't simply abolish centuries of pack law, Vera protested. I'm the Alpha King. Kale's power rolled out, making several wolves drop to their knees. And I'm invoking executive authority to overturn discriminatory breeding laws effective immediately. Any council member who challenges this decision is welcome to fight me for leadership. No one moved. Kale might have looked worn and tired, but he was still the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. No one was foolish enough to challenge him directly. Damon pushed off from the tree, his expression unreadable. Quite the performance, Omega. You have more spine than I credited. But tell me, do you really think one night of dramatic declarations will change centuries of ingrained prejudice? Do you think the council will simply accept their demotion? No, Alara admitted. I think it will be a fight every single day. But that's the point. Change isn't comfortable. Revolution isn't peaceful. And I'd rather fight for something real than run toward pretty lies. She'd aimed the last words at Damon deliberately. His eyes narrowed. You saw something in the sacred pool. I saw truth. She held his gaze. You don't want to free me from the council's control. You want to use me to destroy Kale's bloodline from within. My child was never going to be celebrated in your pack. They were going to be a weapon. Damon's mask finally cracked. Rage flickered across his face before he controlled it. The Thorns murdered my family. And I'm sorry for that. Truly. Alara's voice softened. What Kale's grandfather did was wrong. But using me and my child for revenge won't bring your family back. It will just perpetuate the same cycle of violence and bloodshed. You're naive if you think forgiveness heals everything. I don't. She thought of the 3 months of pain, of believing herself worthless, of the fear that had lived in her bones. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it gives us a chance to build something different, something better. That's what I'm choosing. Damon stared at her for a long moment, something like respect crossing his features. Then he inclined his head, not quite a bow, but an acknowledgement. You're stronger than I thought, Alara Thornborn. Perhaps you will change things. He turned to leave, then paused. But when the council comes for you, and they will remember that I offered you another path. He shifted mid-stride, black fur rippling across his skin as he transformed into a massive wolf. With one last look at the assembled pack, he disappeared into the forest. Silence fell. Then Mira stepped forward, raising the ceremonial bowl once more. The Omega has chosen. The Alpha has accepted her conditions. Now we complete the ceremony. She moved toward the ancient tree, gesturing for Kale and Alara to follow. Kneel before the tree, join hands, and pray the moon finds your bond worthy. Alara's legs trembled as she moved forward. This was it, the final test. If the moon rejected them, everything she'd fought for would crumble. The curse would continue. Her child would be the last of Kale's bloodline. They knelt facing each other, the ancient tree's branches spreading above them like a canopy. Kale's hands found hers, large and warm and solid. Whatever happens, he whispered, thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet. She tried to smile. We still have to survive the moon's judgment. Mira poured the liquid from the bowl moon water, blessed and ancient, over their joined hands. It was cold as ice, burning where it touched skin. Moon goddess, Mira intoned. We present this bond for your blessing. True mates, tested by pain and separation, now reunited by choice and courage. If their hearts are true, show us your light. If their bond is false, show us your darkness. We await your judgment." The clearing held its breath. Above them the moon seemed to pulse, growing brighter, and Alara felt something ancient and vast turn its attention toward them, toward the broken bond they were trying to remake, toward the child growing inside her, toward the choice that would shape generations. The judgment had begun. The moonlight intensified, pouring down through the ancient tree's branches in silver streams. Alara felt it touch her skin like a physical presence, weighing, measuring, searching through every memory and motivation that had brought her to this moment. Kale's hands tightened around hers. She could feel his wolf rising to the surface, responding to the goddess's scrutiny. The mate bond between them flared, no longer the painful half-thing it had been, but not yet complete. It hung suspended, waiting for divine approval or rejection. The moonwater on their joined hands began to glow. Alara's breath caught. Around them, the pack watched in awed silence as the liquid light spread up their arms, weaving between them like threads of starlight. It was beautiful and terrifying. She could feel it probing deeper, past her conscious thoughts into the raw truth of her heart. Why did you choose him? The question wasn't spoken aloud, but Alara heard it, clearly, a voice like wind through ancient forests, like the first howl of a wolf, like moonlight made sound. "Because I love him," she answered silently. "Not because the bond demands it, not because I need his protection, but because when I look at him, I see someone who made a terrible choice trying to do the right thing. I see someone willing to lose everything to make it right. I see the father of my child. I see my future. And the pain he caused you still hurts." Alara didn't try to hide the truth. It might always hurt, but pain doesn't erase love. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to build something new from the broken pieces. The light pulsed, seeming to consider her answer. Then the presence turned its attention to Kale. His entire body went rigid. Alara watched his face, saw him fighting to keep his expression neutral, even as something deep and private happened inside him. A single tear tracked down his cheek, gleaming silver in the moonlight. Whatever the goddess was asking him, whatever truth she was demanding, it was costing him. "Kale?" Alara whispered. His eyes opened, meeting hers. In them, she saw everything laid bare. His love, his regret, his desperate hope. And underneath it all, a fear so profound it took her breath away. "What if I'm not enough?" His thought reached her through the forming bond. What if I fail her again? What if the council finds a way to hurt her that I can't prevent? What if our child grows up hating me for the world they inherit? Then we fail together, Alara sent back, surprised to find she could. And we get up together, and we keep fighting. That's what mates do. The moonlight blazed suddenly, so bright several wolves cried out and shielded their eyes. Alara felt it pierce through her, through Kale, through the space between them. It was like being unmade and remade simultaneously, every cell in her body singing with recognition and power. The bond snapped into place. Not gently, but like a thunderclap, like lightning striking earth. Alara gasped as Kale's emotions flooded through her, his overwhelming love, his bone-deep relief, his wolf's fierce possessive joy, singing, "Mate, mate, mine," and underneath it, something else. Something that made her eyes widen in shock. The curse. She could feel it, a dark thread woven through Kale's bloodline, wrapped around his heart like barbed wire. It had been there since birth, tightening with each generation, slowly choking the life from the royal line. But now, as the bond completed, she felt it begin to unravel. The moonlight focused on that darkness, burning it away thread by thread. Kale cried out, not in pain, but in release, as if he'd been carrying an impossible weight, and someone had finally lifted it. Through their bond, Alara felt the exact moment the curse shattered completely. Freedom, pure and absolute. The light faded gradually, returning to normal moonlight. Alara found herself still kneeling, still holding Kale's hands, but everything had changed. The bond thrummed between them, solid and unbreakable. She could feel his heartbeat as clearly as her own, could sense his wolf's contentment, could taste his emotions like they were her own, and he could feel hers. "You're terrified," his thought reached her, tinged with concern. "Of course I am," she sent back. "I just became Alpha Queen. The council wants me dead. Half the pack thinks I'm unworthy, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither do I." His mental voice held something that might have been a laugh. "But we'll figure it out together." Mira's voice broke through their private communication. "The moon has spoken. The bond is accepted. The curse is broken." She raised her arms, addressing the pack. "I present to you Kale Thorne, Alpha King, and Alara Thorn, Alpha Queen, 7th generation and the breakers of the bloodline curse. Any who would challenge this union must face the moon's judgment directly. No one moved to challenge. Even the council. Members looked shaken, awed by what they'd witnessed. Kale stood, pulling Alara up with him. The movement brought them close, and for the first time since the rejection, they were truly together, no secrets, no distance, nothing but the bond and the choice they'd both made. "I love you," Kale whispered, his forehead touching hers. "I should have said it 3 months ago. Should have fought for us then. I'm sorry. I know." Alara's hands came up to cup his face. "I feel it. Everything. The bond doesn't lie." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, tasting of moonlight and promises and new beginnings. Through the bond, Alara felt his joy, his relief, his absolute commitment to making this work, no matter what came next. When they finally pulled apart, the pack erupted in howls, some celebratory, some uncertain, but acknowledging the new reality nonetheless. Theron approached, a wide grin splitting his face. "About time. I was starting to think you'd both be too stubborn to figure it out." "Shut up," Kale said, but there was no heat in it. His arm remained around Alara's waist, as if he couldn't bear to let her go. Mira touched Alara's shoulder. "The ceremony is complete. But know this, what you've done tonight will have consequences far beyond this pack. You've proven that the old laws are fallible, that bloodlines don't determine worth. Other packs will hear of this. Some will celebrate, others will see it as heresy." "Let them," Alara said, surprised by her own conviction. "Change has to start somewhere." "Indeed it does." Mira's smile was proud. "You'll make a formidable queen, child." As the pack began to disperse, small groups murmuring excitedly about what they'd witnessed, Aldrich approached with clear reluctance. His expression was a mask of barely contained fury. "This isn't over," he said quietly. His words meant only for Kale and Alara. "You may have won tonight, but the council's authority spans more than just this. Pack, there are others who will not accept this. Revolution. Then they can take it up with me." Kale's voice was deadly soft. "And you can tell them that anyone who threatens my mate or my child will answer to me personally." Aldrich's jaw clenched. For a moment, Alara thought he might challenge Kale right there, but survival instinct won out, and he turned and stalked away. "He's right, though," Alara said once he was gone. "This is just the beginning. The real fight starts tomorrow." "I know." Kyle turned her to face him fully. "But tonight, can we just be? Just us? The bond, the fact that we made it through?" Alara felt the exhaustion in him through their connection, 3 months of agony, 3 days without sleep, and the emotional toll of the ceremony. Her own body ached, her shoulder still healing, the baby's presence a gentle weight. "Yes," she whispered. "Tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, we fight." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in months. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "Come on," he said, taking her hand. "Let me take you home." "Home? Our home. The Alpha's quarters. Where you should have been all along." As they walked away from the clearing, the ancient tree's branches seeming to bow in blessing, Alara felt the baby move again. This time, the flutter was stronger, almost like acknowledgement. "We made it," she thought to the child. "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in 3 months, she believed it. Alara stood at the window of the Alpha's quarters, watching dawn paint the forest in shades of gold and amber. Her hand rested on her now prominent belly, 7 months pregnant, and the baby had her father's strength, making their presence known with increasingly powerful kicks. Behind her, she heard Kale stir, felt his consciousness brush against hers through the bond before he'd even fully woken. It was still startling sometimes, this constant awareness of each other, but she'd grown to cherish it, the intimacy of never being truly alone. "You're up early," his voice rumbled, rough with sleep. "Couldn't sleep. The baby's practicing martial arts." She felt his amusement through the bond before his arms came around her from behind, his hands covering hers on her stomach. Almost immediately, the baby kicked against his palm, and she felt his wonder spike. "Strong," he murmured. "Like their mother." "Like both parents." Alara leaned back against his chest. "Have you seen the reports from the other territories?" She felt his tension even before he answered. 3 more packs have abolished their breeding laws. 2 others are considering it. But the Eastern Coalition is pushing back hard. They're calling it the Thorn Heresy. Creative. Her tone was dry, but worry gnawed at her. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind restructuring pack law, facing down council challenges, enduring assassination attempts from traditionalists who saw her as an abomination. Kale had kept his promise to protect her, but the cost had been high. The pack was divided, tensions simmering just below the surface. Luna, Sage, and Iris were sentenced yesterday, Kale said quietly. Exile. Stripped of pack affiliation. I know. I felt your conflict about it. The bond meant no secrets she'd felt him struggling with the decision, torn between justice and mercy. They tried to kill you. Kill our child. His arms tightened protectively. Exile was mercy. I'm not arguing. She turned in his embrace, studying his face. The shadows under his eyes had faded somewhat, but new lines of stress had appeared. Being Alpha King had always been demanding. Being a revolutionary Alpha King was slowly grinding him down. But you can't protect me from everything, Kale. We talked about this. Doesn't stop me from wanting to. A knock at the door interrupted them. Theron's voice called out. Sorry to disturb, but we have a situation. Kale sighed, pressing a kiss to Alara's forehead. Before moving to answer, Theron stood in the hallway, his expression grim. The Eastern Coalition has issued a formal challenge. They're sending representatives next week to assess the stability of the Northern Territories given recent changes. Theron's tone made it clear what he thought of their diplomacy. It's a power play. They want to see if we're weak enough to pressure into reversing the reforms. Let them come. Alara spoke before Kale could. Let them see exactly how strong we are. Both men turned to look at her. Through the bond, she felt Kale's pride mixed with concern. Alara, you're 7 months pregnant. Maybe you should... Should what? Hide? She moved past them into the hallway, heading toward the council chambers. That's exactly what they expect. The weak Omega who got lucky. I won't give them that satisfaction. The emergency council meeting that followed was tense. The council had been restructured after the ceremony Aldrich and Vera removed, replaced by younger wolves who supported the reforms, but old prejudices died hard, and several members still looked at Alara with barely concealed resentment. The Eastern Coalition's challenge cannot be ignored. Marcus, the pack doctor turned council advisor, said carefully, they represent 12 packs. If they unite against us, then we face them united ourselves. Alara's voice cut through the murmurs. We knew this would happen, knew that changing centuries of tradition would create enemies. But we don't back down. We don't apologize. We show them that our pack is stronger because of our reforms, not weaker. How? Aldrich's replacement, a young alpha named Silas, leaned forward. How do we prove that in a week? Alara's mind raced. Then an idea struck, risky, potentially disastrous, but powerful if it worked. We hold a demonstration. We invite every pack in the Northern Territories, including the Eastern Coalition. We show them our training programs, our Omega integration, initiatives, our new strength assessment protocols that measure ability over bloodline. She placed her hand on her stomach. And we introduce them to the next generation, proof that human blood doesn't weaken. It evolves. Silence fell. Through the bond, she felt Kale's alarm. That's putting a target on you and the baby. His thought reached her. The target's already there, she sent back. At least this way we control the narrative. It's risky, Theron said slowly. But it could work. Nothing speaks louder than results. If we can show measurable improvements in pack cohesion, strength, loyalty, we've been tracking those metrics. Another council member, a woman named Iris who'd been named after the exiled wolf, interjected. Inner rank cooperation is up 40%. Territory defense drills show increased efficiency. Omega participation in pack activities has tripled. Because they're no longer afraid of being judged for their bloodlines, Alara said. Because we've created an environment where worth is earned, not inherited. Kale studied her for a long moment, then nodded. We do it. 1 week. Full transparency. Let them see everything, our vulnerabilities and our strengths. If they still choose to challenge us after that, at least it will be an informed decision. The meeting dissolved into planning logistics, security, presentations. Alara contributed where she could, but exhaustion was creeping in. The baby's movements had gentled, and she recognized the signs of her body demanding rest. Kale noticed immediately. You're done for today? He said, his alpha command softened by concern. She wanted to argue, but a particularly strong contraction practice, not labor, but uncomfortable nonetheless, made her wince. Fine, but I want updates. You'll have them. He guided her back to their quarters, his hand never leaving the small of her back. Once inside, she collapsed onto their bed with a grateful sigh. Kyle sat beside her, his hand moving, instinctively to her belly. "What if I'm wrong?" she asked quietly. "What if inviting them here just gives them ammunition to use against us? Then we'll deal with it." His fingers traced gentle patterns over her stomach. "But I don't think you're wrong. I've watched you these past months, Ilara. Watched you transform from someone who thought she had no power to someone who wields it like a weapon. You've changed this pack, changed me. You'll change them too. I'm terrified. I know." He laid down beside her, pulling her close. "But you're also the woman who stood in front of the council and demanded equality. Who walked into a ceremony in white knowing you'd face hatred. Who chose revolution over escape. Terror hasn't stopped you yet." She felt the baby kick against both their hands, a reminder of what they were fighting for. "If anything happens to me during the coalition visit, nothing will. But if it does," she turned to face him, "promise me you'll keep fighting. Keep the reforms. Raise our child to believe bloodlines don't define worth." His expression turned fierce. "Nothing will happen to you. I won't allow it." "Kale." "No." He cupped her face. "I've already lost you once. I'm not doing it again. Whatever comes next week, whatever challenges we face them together. That's the promise I'm making." Through the bond, she felt his absolute conviction. It should have comforted her. Instead, it made her more afraid. Because she knew what he would do to keep that promise. Knew he would burn down the world if it meant keeping her safe. "Together," she echoed, hoping it would be enough. Outside their window, the sun continued its rise, indifferent to the battles ahead. In 7 days, representatives from 12 packs would arrive. In 7 days, Ilara would stand before wolves who believed she was an abomination and prove them wrong, or die trying. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Ilara felt something shift inside her, not fear, but determination. She'd survived rejection, assassination attempts, and the moon's judgment. She would survive this too. For her child. For her mate. For every Omega who'd ever been called tainted. The 8th generation was coming, and they would change everything.